Spring's about ready to spring up at Playcard Environmental Education Center. Today we're going to be looking at all the different habitats at Playcard and seeing how the different organisms come into play and how they're starting to pop out and really get active for their spring festivities. There's all kinds of things happening right now. There's all kinds of plants and animals just doing their thing in the spring and coming back to life and showing the world all their glory. And we're going to be exploring that today in several different habitats. We're going to try and look at first a field habitat, and we're going to be seeing all the different creatures and plants that are in this type of habitat that are popping out in spring, and some things you might be able to see while you're at Playcard. Like here, we have got lots of different plants that are starting to grow like a green carpet below us. They're growing everywhere. You name it, we've got it growing. From our little dog fennels growing here on the ground to a lot of these little carpet flowers here growing. We've got a flower named heel all. We've got it growing below us. These little green carpets starting to develop below all these dead stems of plants just like this right here, our broom straw. That's the dead remnants that were left from last year. A plant you'll find in the spring associated with the earliest part of the spring that gets the sunlight before it gets outcompeted with taller species of plants is called heel all. It is one of the shorter species of wildflower around here. It's only growing about 3 or 4 inches out of the ground. It has got a very unique flower. That flower right there is got it's got a very interesting shape to it. It's almost shaped like a lady's slipper if you're associated with that flower at all, if you know how that's shaped. A little teeny hood over the top of the flower protects the pistil and the stamen from rain and water and the like. And down inside the flower, of course, the bee sticks his proboscis down in there and gets the nectar while he's getting pollen right off the front here, off of those little stamens right there. It's a really interesting flower. This flower was used by the Native Americans as a way to remedy many different skin diseases. Maybe somebody had a fungus infection growing on their finger or something. They could crush this plant down, take the stem, break it apart, or chew it up, and put it onto that wound, and it would heal that wound. That's why it's called heel all. It's a very interesting and very powerful herbal remedy for lots of different ailments. Heel all, and you'll see it in the spring as a little teeny purple bloom. All right. We also have many animals at Playcard in the field that have been surviving the winter, and they're getting ready to spring to life. A couple of different adaptations you're going to see by the animals if you're walking in a field right at the end of spring, just as the first week of 60 to 70 degree weather comes in, the first few days of spring, is you're going to find some of these little jobs right here. And what that is a little egg case that is made by the Carolina mantis. That's our state insect. It's a fantastic way that an insect can survive the winter in the egg form. Well, these things are going to be getting ready to hatch out in about 2 weeks when the weather warms consistently into the 60 degree mark during the daytime periods. And what's going to hatch out from these guys is a praying mantis. And most people out there know what little praying mantises look like, little baby praying mantises. Another creature that we have that has just popped out of a hole out here in this field is the red-legged grasshopper. Here I've got a little dried specimen of him right here. As you can see, he's got red legs on the back of his leg right here for jumping, and they have wings. That means they're the adult form of the insect. If they didn't have wings, they would be the nymph form of the insect, and chances are they're probably not even coming back to life this time of year. At the end of the year, all the adult insects that are still surviving, and they're hanging on for their last breath or two, dig into the ground and they burrow a small chamber 3 or 4 to 5 inches under the ground, because we have no frost line in Horry County. And in the spring, on the first couple of good warm days, you'll have all these winged grasshoppers just take flight out of nowhere, and they're just coming out and they're getting ready to lay eggs for the new spring season. So this is the first generation of the new year. Kind of cool. Well, guys, we have found evidence of an animal that has come through in the early spring feeding on some of this low grass and low plants that we have right now. This is part of the deer life cycle to leave their tracks around in Playcard's fields. If you see a deer's track, you know that by seeing two front toes. These would be like fingernails to you and I, but they grow out and they become hoofs in ungulate animals. That ungulate means that walking on toes. That's what the word means. They walk along with their two front toes, and those two front fingernails or hoofs on those toes leave those indentations in the ground right there. And the old remnants of their back foot, or the back toes, leave these two marks right here in the back. So that's the front toes, and that's the two older back toes that are located farther up, like about right near our wrist joint is where it would be on us, but on a deer it's up on the leg here. And we've also got another little unique evidence that a deer has been here recently. We have got deer poo. If you see these little bitty balls right here, I know a lot of kids come to our center and they pick these things up and they go, ooh, a seed, you know, in first grade and stuff like that. I gotta tell them, no, that's poo-poo. As a matter of fact, we kid the kids about it being kind of like trick cereal. It looks like it's got that round circular shape there. And all that is old dried up plant material that has gone through his digestive tract and has come out on the ground here. The stuff he couldn't use, he just boop, right on the ground there. So that's evidence of a deer moving through a field. Deer are active year-round, and in the spring they are extremely active creatures. Also in our field you will find a species that is from another country. You're going to find the Brazilian fire ant, and these guys here are actually a pest species in the United States, and they are everywhere. The first days of spring, as you can see where it's rained here, these past two cold rains, we have no ants here. First day of spring brings the ants from underground family-like chambers where they've been living for the whole winter time up to the surface of the earth, and this little mound here might be as deep as 5 or 6 feet deep here in this field because it's 5 or 6 inches tall. The number of inches tall a mound is equals roughly the number of feet down in the ground it goes. So if you have a 5 or 6 inch tall mound, you know you have got about a 5 or 6 foot deep mound below this. And it is an amazing creature and a very adaptable to, unfortunately for us, very adaptable to many different environments, the Brazilian fire ant. Now, as you can see here, we have got a footprint on top of there, and these ants are already starting to come out and be active. Just one warm day of 60-degree weather has brought those things to active status and active lives. All these little worker ants here and guard ants, some of the guards are bigger than the workers, are starting to run around and chase whatever has stepped on their mound right there. They're communicating chemically to one another and saying, get him, intruder here, intruder here. And they're biting and trying to sting everything in their path, even this little stick I'm putting in there, they're trying to bite and sting it. So you little guys out there, beware of the fire ant nest. Even though they look like they're dormant and they're dead, they can still have fire ants in there. You guys watch out. Also, as a way you can tell spring is coming, and many different times of the year, especially when spring brings the first warm air currents to a field, you will see the red-tailed hawk, and you'll see them circling around above the field. And what they're looking for is they're looking for little mice and rodents that are out trying to scurry around and gather this year's first real good crop of plants for the year to survive. And he's going to be circling, looks like he's coming this way, right over our field here. That guy, he has the vision of a set of 10 or 12 power binoculars. For those of you out there that are used to using binoculars, you know how good a vision that is. If you put binoculars in front of your eyes, you're roughly seeing what that bird right there is looking at it down into this field. That is an amazing creature, and he has fantastic vision. He can see a mouse probably 200 or 300 feet up in the air. That is wild. The woods offer a lot of different activity that happens really well in this first part of spring for the mammals as well. And since we have a hard time filming mammals out here and without many, many weeks in the field, we have to use taxidermied animal mounts, our road-killed animal mounts. And a lot of animal sign that you're going to see this time of year is from these two animals right here. This is the gray fox and the good old squirrel. In this case, this is a fox squirrel. You can tell he's a fox squirrel because he has this big black patch right on top of his head. And he's a little bit bigger than the gray squirrel, and he's got very, very large claws he uses for climbing the trees with. These guys right here are right now digging up in the forest. You see little dig marks everywhere. If you're walking through, it looks almost like little paw prints, except they're dug down in the ground about 2 or 3 inches. What that is where the squirrel has buried their nuts earlier in the year, which plants some of the nuts and acorns, of course, for more regeneration of the forest. and they go along, they dig them up, and that's their cache, their little stash they've got, so to speak, of all their nuts from the spring, and they're eating them out right now. Yeah, that's it. That's the fox squirrel, and he's sitting on a cat head stump, what we call a cat face. The cat face on this stump was created years ago from turpentine production. If you're ever walking around in woods in Horry County and you see stumps that have a cut similar to this with an angle here, and a cut down into the middle of it, you know that was used for turpentine production. This stump right here was actually used so much for turpentine, the tree was rather, before the tree died, that this whole stump has been preserved for many, many hundreds of years, because all it is now is just full of resiny sap. That whole stump is made out of what we call fat lighter in Horry County. It's a very flammable sap that gets into these stumps and preserves them. Fat lightered stump. One of the first signs of spring that you're going to see in the forest is going to be the mole and the shrew activity. And you can see them by looking at these long burrows of chambers right underneath the edge of the ground here that are starting to show signs of holes where the shrews have been out on the surface of the ground hunting for insects. Since they're insectivores, insect-eating species, they've got to eat tremendous amounts of food to survive during the winter periods. What they need to do to keep their body temperature very warm, it's a super high body temperature they have, it's even higher than the humans, is they need to be able to eat over 200 or 300 insects in a period of several hours. It is amazing. They usually hunting grubs and worms and things of that nature that are living right underneath the surface of the earth. And they'll be going along and sniffing right along the edge of the ground and these roots here, and they're eating all these grubs and little living creatures that live in this imaginary underground. It's not imaginary, it's a real world. It's about this deep in the soil. It's got lots and lots and lots of insect life. They love to dig and burrow. Springtime is a wonderful time to share the sounds of nature as well as the sights of nature. One of the neat tricks that I was taught years ago by a wildlife biologist and a naturalist in the field, when I went to Clemson, was if you are in a natural area and you want the area to go back to its state it was in with the same amount of activity in the same places as before you arrived, you give it about 5 to 10 minutes of total silence and as much stillness as you can have. So if you totally froze like you were in ice and listened and watched for about 5 to 10 minutes, you become part of your surroundings to the animals, and they'll come out and do what's natural to them. So the next time you're in a natural area and you want to see what animals do, just be real still and real quiet for about 10 minutes, and you'll get to see what life has to offer while you're not there. It's a neat trick. Some of the most magnificent things you can see in the spring are buds, spring buds. And what a bud is, like this little swamp azalea bud we see right here on the tip of this limb here. Buds are all of the new growth for the entire year rolled up into a little bitty teeny bit, a little ball, kind of like this. It's only about a ½ inch long, right there on the tip of the stem, right on the tip of that twig right there. That's going to roll out and become the flower. It's going to become what parts of the flower that pollinate the flower later on. It's going to become the seed, and it's going to have all the new growth on the tip of this twig rolled into this little teeny capsule of life called a bud. When you see these buds get big and fat and get ready to pop open, as a matter of fact, there's a couple popping open right here, you know spring is on the way. That's nature's thermometer to tell you that spring is almost here. All right, guys, this month's Species of the Month is one of the most interesting species we have at Playcard because it not only is it interesting, it has a bit of danger to it as well. It's called the Copperhead, and if you don't really see him in this picture right now, it's because of this extremely well-camouflaged body that he has. Most venomous snake bites that occur in our area are due to this little fellow right here. This guy is one of the ones that you do not need to do this at home. You do not need to try to catch a snake. All you little guys out there, make sure you get an adult before you do any kind of snake catching whatsoever. We need to focus in really quickly on his head. As you can see, his head is in an upright position. He's ready to strike now. His head is right here where the stick is. I've got a little forked stick about 4 feet long. It's longer than he is. We're going to try and pin his head, and I'm going to grab him by the back of the head so we can show the body parts off. He is, see him lying totally still? He's really hard to see. He's a lying weight predator. He waits for animals to come across his path and he strikes them like mice and whatnot. So I'm going to see that tongue coming out and seeing where the heat is off of my body. See him coil. Okay, now he's in a defensive position. I got his head straight down like this. Now he can still bite if provoked. So let's pull his body out so you can see it. And I'm going, if his head moves, I'm going to jump. Okay, see, we've got his body here. It's an extremely beautiful color. It's the exact same coloration as the leaves, and that's why they're so dangerous. Most people that get bitten in the United States get bitten because they're trying to catch a snake. About 9 out of 10 bites occur because you're trying to catch one, just like I'm doing right here. So again, you kids don't do this. This is when most people get bit. The most dangerous part, once again, when you try to catch a snake is when you try to go from having his head on a stick like this to having his head in your fingers like this, because he can flare that head around and he can snap you, he can snip you. He's got very potent venom, and you can see him sticking those fangs out right now. He's opened his mouth, and if we can get a stick, a small stick, you can actually see the venom itself that he produces right out of his fangs. We're going to try and get him to walk up with his little fangs right here, up that stick. You see that fang protrude out? You see it shoot out right there? See that? Oh, okay. Now he's trying to stick that fang right there into that stick and inject his venom right now. If you wanted to milk a snake, that's how you do it. I'm not going to hold too tight on his neck because I could kill this guy, but I'm going to hold him tight enough where he's got my respect, let me tell you. Now, their back scales are keeled. What that means is in the center of each scale, it's got a little ridge running right down the middle of it. So they're keeled scales. Underneath scales here, they're ventral scales, this being the dorsal side, the back scales, this being their ventral scales, their belly scales. They are single in the back, behind the vent, behind their little part where they do their thing, behind their vent here near their tail, they are single keeled. Most of your venomous snakes in South Carolina have a single keeled scale behind their the vent here. They're ovoviviparous, and what that means is ovo means egg bearing, viviparous means live bearing. They're a mixture of egg bearing and live bearing. What happens is a male will mate with this snake, and then the female will have fertilized eggs inside her. Instead of laying an egg like most other reptiles, she will actually have the egg hatch inside of the body and lay the egg, or have the little babies come out of her vent, just like live birth. But the egg is actually still there. So she does have an egg that is inside her body. She's called ovo. And then viviparous means live birth. So she's a mixture of egg laying and live birth. She's a pit viper. Okay, this is a pit viper, and she's got beautiful facial features here. All pit vipers have a pit on the front which they sense heat with. As you can see, right here is the pit. She's trying to get me. I'm going to have to point with a stick. The pit is right here on my finger, as you can see right there. Right between the nose and the eye, there's a hole right there. That is the pit. That will sense heat of any animal, like say a mouse, a woodland mouse, running through the woods. She reaches out, she's laying there, all camouflaged, and she'll come out and go pop, and she'll hit that mouse. And about 2 minutes later, that hemotoxin, that blood toxin, will go out and start killing the mouse. It's really a beautiful species, and one you really need to watch out for in South Carolina. It's one of the most respected animals in the woods, but one that we need to respect it by leaving it alone and not killing them. Most people the only snake they ever see is the last time it's ever seen is a human because they kill it. These guys here, leave them alone. They have a fairly good-sized home range, and if you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. Just make sure you know the signs of the copperhead. They've got beautiful eyes, too. They look like cat eyes. They have a slitted pupil for nocturnal vision. They're awesome. Everybody, remember the copperhead. some people in our area call them, this is Horry County, they call them pilot snakes, but they're still the same thing. It's the Copperhead family. Beautiful snake. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Forever Wild, where we showed the transition from winter to spring and how life comes back from the depths of winter to really come to life in the springtime. Next time, we hope you watch when we're going to bring you another episode of Forever Wild, environmental education topic from Horry County, South Carolina. Everybody out there, thank you for watching. I'm Ben Roadkill Abercrombie from Playcard Environmental Education Center. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Go.